Hello and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Commute. Today I'm somewhere a little different. I'm here in Strasbourg, rainy Strasbourg. We're here for a few days and I thought it's a great opportunity to film a little episode, Content Marketing Commute, on my commute to work in a cafe / co-working here in Strasbourg. If you don't know Strasbourg, it's pretty famous for its Christmas markets, but it's a rainy March day today. And Strasbourg on the east side of France in the Alsace region. It's a beautiful place. It's awesome. Here I am in a big square. If you're just listening in on the podcast apps, on the audio apps, head over to YouTube and you'll see the beautiful sights of Strasbourg, like this one. Ooh, I walked past that earlier. Well, this is an About Last Week episode, and if you're new to the podcast here on Content Marketing Commute, we do a couple of different kinds of episodes. I interview an expert content marketer on their way to work every 2 weeks, and then the week between, what I do is I reflect on it in an episode called About Last Week. I take one part of that episode and I reflect on one specific part. What does it mean for us? Let's dive a little bit deeper. These are short episodes, so let's get right into it. Last week, I spoke with Nathalie Figuere from Coderpad in Montpellier. How did I do it? Last week I was in Montpellier, this week I'm in Strasbourg. I live in the south of France. We're all over the place. It's incredible. And we spoke about a whole bunch of different things, but today on the podcast, wanted to focus on one specific thing we talked about, which was being the guardian of the why in your company as a content marketer. And I'll talk you through what that means. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, please do go ahead and listen to it wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, or on my Substack. But essentially, the sense of having an outside-in mindset as a content marketer and being able to bring an outside-in mindset, specifically when working with SMEs, subject matter experts, who have more of a inside-out perspective. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So when we talk about experts, and you know, if you're working in a company, you will no doubt have people like this. They might be in the product team, they might be in customer success, they might be in all sorts of different teams, even sales. And they are an expert in their space. They know it inside and out. They might have a PhD in whatever it is that your company sells, or the area within which your company operates. And these people, working with them is absolute gold in content marketing. Why? Because they know the space better than anyone else. They have the expertise, and great content often comes from expertise, right? It comes from being able to produce content that actually has an interesting point of view, that actually is super insightful, and that's not just the beige sort of repetition of stuff that everyone's talking about, right? But the problem with working with these people is that they're not marketers. They're very seldom marketers, and they very seldom have a kind of marketing brain. They know a huge amount about the topics, for sure, but I think, and I think Natalie thinks too, good on you Natalie, that content marketers can bring a lot to the table in terms of bringing an outside-in mindset. So thinking about the audience first and collaborating with these subject matter experts to be able to not necessarily become a deep expert themselves in the space, but actually ask the right questions and bring focus on the right things and package the expertise in a way that makes sense for the audience. And I've often thought and talked about that a really big sort of like marketing skill that's underappreciated is asking so what. And I remember a manager I had talked to me about this a while back, and it's always stuck with me as the sense of, if you're creating a campaign, you're writing a piece of copy, whatever it is you're doing in marketing, the marketing superpower is being able to take a step back and ask yourself, so what? If I know my audience well enough, and that's a big part of being a great marketer, put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself, so what? Why would they care about this? Because the longer you're in a company, the easier it is to forget that, and to forget that your audience doesn't necessarily care that much about your brand. So what? What's in it for them? What's in it for the audience? And doing that in collaboration with your SMEs, who sometimes are lost in the detail of the programming language or whatever it is. Back in a role in New Zealand that I had, I worked with a guy who was sort of a PhD in, I'm not sure what, computer science or something, and he introduced me to the programming language R, which you might know about. It's all sort of like statistical and linked to like calculating probabilities of things. I think he was a data scientist. Anyway, I'm not that smart and I didn't understand it very well to start with. But you start to realize that these people, they know the space so well, but they don't necessarily know how to put it together in a way that makes sense for the audience and that's digestible, right? So he'd write big, long white papers, and it's either the format or the tone or all that sort of thing. I think content marketers can bring a lot of value there. And sure, the people we're trying to reach were sort of similar to him in some ways, but having a marketing mindset to be able to package that, even if it should be incredibly detailed and it doesn't all make sense to me, but the way you communicate that, I think content marketers can bring a lot to the table. So I want to just finish off this episode with 3 really quick ideas around how to do this well. First one is, when collaborating with SMEs, ask the right questions. I think content marketers who ask questions are the best ones. They're the best at what they do. They're curious. We talked about that in the episode with Nathalie. And actually, when you're working with your SMEs, being able to ask the right questions is so important. If you can ask the right questions, you're going to be able to create something that's much more quality than just kind of like following a playbook and expecting it to work. Perhaps there's a way of communicating this expert content or this expert insight that's different, and your audience might want it in a different kind of format. And even for you being able to get a grasp on it, asking the right questions, like coming back to that so what, asking that SME, why does it matter? Why would it matter to the audience? Why should they care? And trying to pull that out of them is so important. Number 2 is know your audience. We've touched on that throughout this episode. But if you're going to do this well, you really need to understand and know who you're speaking to, those personas, and know them inside and out, more than sort of just like writing on a page. You need to be talking to them. You need to be hearing from them. You need to have a way to understand them better. And so, whether that's through tools like Gong, where you're listening into calls, or being able to attend meetings or industry events, and Nathalie talked about that last week. Super important that you get to know your audience, because if you don't know them well, you're not going to be able to bring your expertise to the table in collaborating with these SMEs to create some incredible content and bring it back to the why. And finally, I think the 3rd step is really being able to package it in a way that is digestible. And this speaks to formats, but it also speaks to just the way you communicate that content. So often with experts, it'll get very detailed very quickly. They know so much about the space, but bringing it back to the why, and potentially not every piece of content needs to have all the detail, but it needs to kind of take someone a little bit further. So you could, for example, think about how you design a journey with different levels of information, and not every piece of content needs to be like the whole hog of explaining every detail of the topic, which an expert might want to do because they know everything about it. Some might be able to be more high level, some might want to dive into it a little bit more. But regardless, even the way it's written, short paragraphs, choppy text, bullet points, things that make it digestible rather than what I've seen in previous companies, really academic writing and really long pieces, which is not always bad, but I think everyone wants to consume content that's digestible, that has the value up front, that respects their time, in which they're able to get the insights out quickly. And so I think as a content marketer, you can be someone who does that and brings that to the table and knows how to create content that's digestible. So that's really all the thoughts I have, focused here today on being the champion of the why as a content marketer, that so what, and specifically in working with the experts in your company. This is something I want to get better at. Do you do it? Let me know. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me an email at joe@contentmarketingcommute.com. There's a tram there. And you would really love to hear from you. So hope you've enjoyed this episode. Next week, you're going to want to be around next week on the podcast because we have another interview back in Paris. I go to Paris quite a bit, you would have noticed from the episodes. I interviewed a YouTuber, flippin' awesome, and a little bit out of the box. And next week's episode is going to be all about what a YouTuber can teach us as B2B marketers and B2B content marketers. So you're going to want to subscribe, let a friend know about the podcast, and stay tuned for that one. See you next time. Bye-bye.